And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ann Vanderstill. It is 1 o'clock on Friday, and we are still in the war zone here on Steel News. Got a really interesting show for you today. For those of you in the MMTLP community, I know a lot of you are live right now on a space with my good friend, Dr. Jane Ruby. And thank you so much, Jane, for stepping in and also lifting up this message, what's happening with the full-on agency corruption, the war against we the people. We've got another story today, and it's more, it looks like more agency corruption. But before we begin, it's important to establish context clearly and carefully, because the story of Michael Castillero is of a man who is a former securities professional, and he's one of the principals behind Straight Path Venture Partners, a private investment firm that operated in the pre-IPO market. His firm marketed access to shares in private companies such as Palantir and Airbnb before those companies went public. And in 2022, the Securities and Exchange Commission filed a civil enforcement action against Straight Path and its principals, alleging violations of federal securities law. The action resulted in an emergency asset freeze and the appointment of a court-ordered receiver to take control of the firm. Following that civil case, the Department of Justice brought criminal charges in the Southern District of New York, and we all know just how corrupt that district is. And in November, a federal jury convicted Mr. Castillero and two of his co-defendants on multiple counts, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and investment advisor fraud. Sentencing is pending. I believe it's March coming up next year. Mr. Castillero disputes the government's narrative. He claims that his investors were profitable before the government intervention, and that his firm cooperated voluntarily with the regulators, and that the receivership, not fraud, caused the investor harm. And if there's anything we're learning, is that a lot of times our government goes out and stakes claims, makes claims, puts press releases out, which does harm to stocks. And then the real pain begins. Mr. Castillero also further alleges that his cooperation was weaponized against him, and that his prosecution reflects systemic misconduct within the SEC and the Southern District of New York. A pardon application has been submitted through counsel Peter Tickton. So, folks, these are really serious allegations. They're claims, they're not findings yet, and they exist alongside a jury conviction, which, again, consider the context of the SDNY, sort of like trying to get a fair jury in Washington, D.C., and, of course, an extensive public record that would say otherwise. So today's purpose is not to relitigate a case through emotion or politics. It's not to act like a megaphone for any narrative. The purpose is determined whether or not these claims supported by evidence, or whether what we're seeing is a plea for clemency rather than a true story, because, of course, the distinction matters. And here on Steel News, we always take the receipts, we show them as best we can, and then, of course, we come to some conclusions. A lot of times you guys have been really helpful in that. But what I'm hearing are such similar parallels to another story with the MMTLP that you have to start to look at the bigger picture. So right now joining me is Michael Castillero. Michael, it is great to have you here on Steel News. You've heard me talk about MMTLP. You reached out to me because you said, hey, I'm a victim too. And your story is very compelling. I haven't seen all the receipts, and I want to make sure that the audience is aware of that. So the fact that Trennis Evans and Peter Tickton are coming alongside you and putting in that pardon application for President Trump is very compelling. And that's the reason I'm talking to you today. So I just want to be very clear about that.
Thank you for that. And Trennis and Peter did extensive, I think they did 2 or 3 months of due diligence on my case, and even spoke to current counsel, that was our lawyers in the case, to make sure that they were leading us in the right direction on that, because Peter's not going to put his name on something if he doesn't believe in it.
Agree. And that's, again, a very compelling reason to look at this case and very seriously. That, again, from what the conversation we have, and I want to run through just the highlights of that. We're going to bring Trennis Evans in here in a minute. He's actually out at AmFest in Phoenix. So I appreciate him taking time to join us on this, because this is an important story. And as I continue to develop the MMTLP story, which is absolutely massive, I spent 3 hours on a Zoom yesterday, and I saw the evidence that absolutely confirms the fraud, the collusion between agencies to take down a company for the profit and the profiteering of bankers and hedge funds, et cetera, people that were market makers that shorted the stock. and then of course left the bag, the real investors, the 100,000 or so people holding the bag. So this is really an evidentiary interview. I try not to make it promotional. I want people to understand your story. So can you tell us the exact charges you were convicted of and the date of the conviction?
November 4th, 2025. They
Mm-hmm.
convicted me of 2 counts of obstruction of justice, which are laughable because we voluntarily gave them information, and 4 counts of investment advisor wire fraud. I mean, my lawyer says they want to put me away for 25 years.
Was this a jury verdict or was it a plea?
It was a jury verdict that Judge Jesse Furman changed at the last second. He changed, and when the charging instructions came through, he basically threw a wrench at the last second, tried them as investment advisors, which we clearly weren't. We were a pre-IPO fund, an exempt reporting advisor. And he basically threw that wrench right in there. And once you tell them to charge us as investment advisors, obviously they're going to go with that route. It took them like 4 hours
Right.
to come with that. It's the judge was basically a fourth lawyer for the prosecution. It was always 15 days of court. I'm telling you right now, we won every day. In experts that they paid, probably anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million of taxpayer money wasted on them. They were leaving with their tails between their legs. FINRA professionals, which had no business being there, being paid for the day, and everybody, we won every single day, and at the last second they just twisted everything around.
All right. So you've said you voluntarily cooperated. When did you first really begin giving them everything they were requesting?
I mean, since the company was an exception, we've always given them everything, right? So under the eyes of the SEC, we're what's called an exempt reporting advisor.
Right.
So let's say they just want to know that basically we're doing good business, and if we buy 100 shares of something, we only sell 100 shares of something. But being that my partner had 35 years compliance experience with brokerage firms, she decided to give them 10 things. So being that she gave that and ultra compliant, because we were doing business with a lot of boutique broker dealers that wanted our product, it became something that in 2021, they turned all our voluntary information into a case against us.
Right. Did you sign a proffer or a cooperation agreement?
Yes, when they threatened to denaturalize me as an American citizen.
Wow. Was that agreement in writing?
Yeah, but I refused to sign it at the end because they lied to me. The DOJ lied to me.
All right. Tell us about that lie, because I think that's really critical. And I'm going to bring Trennis in here in a second.
They brought me in, so they threatened me to cooperate against my 2 business partners at the time. Mm-hmm. I said, why? We've done nothing wrong. And my lawyer at the time says, oh, Judge Furman can't wait to put you in jail. And I go, what? What are you talking about? And being that President Trump came in, we're looking to use some of those denaturalization laws. They know that you came here and legally, and when you were 18, became an American citizen, and they're looking into denaturalizing you. And I was like, what? I go, I got a wife and 2 kids. You're going to deport me now over this? So they brought me in. I did what I had to do. And they promised me something, and they promised me I would be removed off the case, I'd be done, and I could go live my life, which is what I wanted at that point. It's been 4 years. Right. And at the end, oh, no, you got to sign the forfeiture of everything that you own. Oh, okay. I said, you can tell them I'll see them in court. So they lied to me to try to get information out of me, which they couldn't.
Right. All right. I'm going to bring Trennis in here. Trennis, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're out in AmFest in Phoenix. I'm sure that's a really exciting place at the moment. You've been running alongside with Michael on this story, and Peter Tickton. You and Peter worked closely together. You've been doing incredible work around the J6 pardon community. From where you're sitting, how are you assessing this situation right now with respect to the agency and the takedown of Michael's company?
Well, I want to first say that Mr. Castillero is sharing Michael here as a friend of ours for sure at this time. We've come to know Michael. We're very compassionate about the case and what we've uncovered here. And I want to note that Mr. Castellero's statements previously are relevant to the fact of the information that was shared to him by his attorneys, by his legal counsel, by Mr. Tickton, myself, and others. That I'm not the legal counsel, to be clear. I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to be very clear about that. I'm not trying to pretend to be one, but I am a paralegal and I do quite a bit of work. So what we have to understand about Mr. Castellero's case is he's a victim, and these aren't co-defendants. They're other victims that are really in this matter, and that's the reality, and that's how his attorneys see the matter. It's how we see the matter, and this is what's been shared with Mr. Castillero. So the statements he's making are likely formed based on the idea of what's been shared with him. And it really is on face value. One can see this. And even the judge, I will remind everybody watching that the judge stated that Mr. Castillero, by what they did to him at sentencing by jury instruction, which, was long established. I told him, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till the jury instructions come, sir.
Right.
And we had that discussion. And sure enough, it was as we suspected, that the judge put them into a categorically false arena and push them into this siphon, if you will, that made the jury convict them on these matters. And this is what happens when you have people that are improperly making claim in the court, whether it be an officer of the court as an attorney, or if it is the judge himself. And the judge actually recognized his own flawed evaluation of this matter and said it was creating an appealable issue. So I think that's specifically what Mr. Castillero is speaking to. And be very clear, Ann, and to your audience, as you have to understand what happens, and what we've uncovered was we review quite a number of these SEC cases and so-called violations. What we find is that time and time again, a receiver is appointed, right? And this is a legal term. The receiver is appointed, and they're supposed to manage this company, get it on its feet, make it whole or solvent or not solvent, whatever the case may be. There's a couple of directions they can either take a company through the bankruptcy process. In Mr. Castillero case, Mr. Martinson, Ms. and Fran, et cetera, what they've done in this case is similar to what we see happening elsewhere with the SEC. And what they do is they find something that's not really a crime, and then they look at it that maybe at the very best would be a typical SEC fine. But what happened is the government took the position that this was a Ponzi scheme. They released this information publicly. Then they determined, oh, there is no Ponzi scheme here. So they had to hunt down some other element to charge these men and women with. And what they did then is, now you're talking about disclosures, and these are the fine print pages that you see behind. Mr. Castillero and his team worked very diligently with, I believe it was the #2 firm that does Wall Street work, that advises companies that are similar in nature to Mr. Castillero's company. And they had what they called the proper disclosures. And it says, consult your financial advisor, consult your legal counsel, et cetera, et cetera. Because we are not these things. Everyone knows that they're not. The idea that they're unregistered broker dealer, that's right. They don't have to have a license for doing what they do. They're essentially a salesperson with a product, and we have this opportunity. You can purchase this. Here it is. Make an informed decision. Consult the people that should give you information, financial advisors and attorneys. And at that time, once you've made an informed decision, we'll be here and we can have, said discussion about your investment. And that's what these people did. The defendants here, as they're called by the government, again, victims of the full force of the federal government. And we were going to get into how this ties to Arctic frost and the effort to destroy conservatives, et cetera. But the reality here is what's happened now. Then they placed them in this box. The DOJ or the SEC has themselves kind of in a bad position because they've made this false accusation. And what would have happened is Mr. Castillero and team would have sued the SEC and other organizations and had a large net gain from that, is our position. So what they did is then they find something in the disclosures that they don't like, that change from administration to administration, and suggest now that we've committed a crime. Oh, here it is. Sorry, we were wrong about the whole reason we started this. But it's worse than that, Ann. And here's how it's worse. these receivers, like Mr. Castillero had mentioned, and these are factual numbers, they spend tens of millions of dollars to review the exact same information that's already been reviewed by the SEC. And who is that? Somebody of the receiver. And these are the judges, right? Former judges and AUSAs. So what we have is a big club called the SEC that operates under SDNY, the United States Attorney's Office, their district attorney's office, and they penalize, destroy, target, and not in any specific order, individuals like Mr. Castillero and the venture company here. So Straight Path was operating a legal operation, not doing anything wrong. But what they did is they found something, 3 felonies a day. We've all read the book, or we understand the terminology and talking points, that they said, oh, in order to cover our tracks for what we've done to these people in the destruction of the company, we're going to now charge them with these alleged crimes. And we're going to try and fit a square peg in a round hole in the government. It's much which relates to like 1512 obstruction of Congress, which you saw with January 6th. And the idea that we could remove a president from the ballot in Colorado with the Norma Jean Anderson case. Same mentality by leftist rabid dogs that attempt to destroy American citizens. Finally, these people line their pockets and experience great wealth in this wonderful club of the world of receivers and investigators as they destroy these people, like Mr. Castillero. Additionally, I want it known, and it should be heard, that defendants, here as they're called, the people that actually purchased these products, would have made mass profits on this by not illegal or insider trading, but totally legal trades. And they would have made mass profits on this. But when the government stepped in, the government has squeezed all of the profit and all of the money out to where these defendants are getting pennies on the dollar of their original investment, instead of, just in cases, 2 to 4 times what their expectation was of profit or gain. So this is the disturbing, ongoing mastermind scheme that has taken place in the financial sector. And it's one of the things that President Trump tried to put an end to back in his first term. We think because these people are operating in consistent, Straight Path operated consistently with the efforts of the president to loosen things, to make things move, to build a stronger economy, to give opportunity not only to the big banks, but to the little guy like Mr. Castillero. And they delivered to American people making a lot of money. And now these people are just as damaged, but it wasn't by Mr. Castillero's action. It was by the actions of the federal government.
Right. And the bad press that is all over the internet when you put his name in, it's everywhere, which is a common theme that we see when it comes to takedowns of companies, right? Michael, at the time you sold pre-IPO interests, did you own or control the shares?
Yes.
Okay. And go ahead.
We had 6.5 million shares of Palantir when it went public. We had a massive amount. Our second largest position was Airbnb, SoFi. I mean, the household unicorn names.
So you weren't selling shares you didn't own. You weren't borrowing money to sell naked shorts, essentially.
Never.
Okay. Because the SEC alleges there's a share deficit. So you dispute that. What proof have you offered the SEC to prove that you weren't selling naked shares?
They have everything. They've always had everything. What happened is they tried to cause a shortage by not allowing us to pay stock at the end when they tried to take the company from us. And when we paid for stock, technically, actually, we paid I think it was about a $4 million contract that we paid for. And then Brian, my partner, went to pay for another contract. Mm-hmm. They were trying to block us from paying that because they wanted to create that narrative. So again, the SEC should always issue corrective action if they find a mistake somewhere. They never did. They said that it was a 4-year emergency shutdown. I don't know what emergency takes 4 years to come through. Right? And
exactly.
It's a change administration emergency.
Right. How many investor complaints existed before this government intervention when they claimed there was an emergency and shut down the stock trading?
0.
Right. Again, so from where I'm sitting, and again, this is just, I'm sort of waxing poetically here, if you will. This smells like a government setup designed, with agency collusion to destroy a business, to get a scalp because, or through a plea agreement, right? Because that's how 97% of the cases, Trent has hold me accountable on this, 97% of the cases are won by the FBI DOJ because they ascertain they get a plea agreement. It's not necessarily a win. They just get people so intimidated, they get a plea agreement. You've lawyered up. You've got President Trump's attorney. President Trump's stock, TMTG, was also targeted in the same sort of by naked short sellers, and they really drove that stock price down. Devin Nunes wrote a letter about this. Trennis, maybe you can sort of draw some comparisons to what happened with President Trump's stock and what Michael Castillero is experiencing at the hands of agency that potentially is very corrupt here.
There's very distinct parallels that fit this. And you find it not only with this case, but we have interviewed and discussed and have 7 other cases that we're finding great similarity to this matter that I find highly concerning, that I'm aware of these, that we have now uncovered. Essentially, as far as I'm concerned, the SEC and SDNY are nothing more than a new version of the mob. Like basically you pay us for protection, the big banks, and what they do is they protect big banks and interest from people like Mr. Castillero, the little guy entering the market and having an opportunity. That's what it's really going on here. In addition to that, I want to make note that Mr. Castillero, being a member of one of the Trump clubs, if you look at this sweeping indictment and the charging and the efforts that were done by the Jack Smith investigation, you quickly find that anyone that was a conservative, including the U.S. senators, now they're all whining and gawking and asking for $500,000 just for their phones being tapped. They haven't been criminally charged. They haven't been through a prosecution. They haven't been dragged through the ringer, but it was coming for them. I think now that's part of the motivation. By the way, I'm going to mention that we see now with the idea that they're suddenly interested in getting President Trump's confirmations through at light speed here in the final year, essentially after nearly of this administration, because they've now realized what's coming for them and they have to make some bold actions here. But more importantly, Arctic Frost had an opportunity. It was a dragnet style investigation to take on any conservative, and they wanted to cut and chop out the financial legs of anyone that would associate with President Trump, MAGA, the Trump administration, the Trump organizations, fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. I stood in the room at AmFest yesterday. I had numerous other people approach me yesterday telling me similar stories to Mr. Castillero's, how they came after their financial interests. And these things are just, I mean, it's erupting. We're getting more and more of these cases. We're hearing more and more of these stories. And this was the sweeping dragnet by Jack Smith. This man, we track him all the way back to Arkansas State Senator John Wood, that you and I have talked about before, Ann, that this is what they do. It's a playbook, right?
Yep.
And it's a well-established one. Jack Smith maybe didn't create or invent the idea, but he certainly has laid claim to perfecting the unlawful targeting of individuals. And in creating this, and those the lackeys or those that follow this will take on this form of a hydra, if you will, because now it has so many heads that operate with this ideology to destroy what they call the MAGA cult, right?
Right. So, Michael, let's talk about the receivership aspect of this, because when companies go into receivership, you've got the receivers that manage it, and there's fees associated with that. So let's start with the obvious question here. What was the asset value at the time of the receivership takeover of your company? Oh, I have him muted. 1 second, Michael. 1 second. I apologize. I had to mute you because there was some background noise. I think you have your speakers up too loud and it's feeding back through your microphone.
I believe it's in the $200 to $300 million number.
Okay. Did you file any formal objections to the receiver's conduct in court?
I believe so. Our receiver actually the SDNY backdoored through the receiver to use our attorney-client privilege against us in the criminal trial. So Judge Lewis Kaplan, which we know very famously of the President Trump's E. Jean Carroll case, found a way to backdoor our attorney-client privilege, and basically we had none going into this case.
If the receivership was corrupt, do you have a paper trail to prove any corruption in the receivership? Because you're talking about judicial and prosecutorial misconduct. You've named Judges Kaplan, who you just said, and Furman. So were there any motions filed for recusal or misconduct in this case?
Yeah, I believe our counsel was filing a lot of that too. We also, we're also unhappy about, so when they said there was a quote unquote shortage, we gave them enough to cover their own quote unquote shortage and say, okay, buy the shares.
Right.
They never did. They just, you know what they did? They took that money and they created fees so that money would go into their pockets.
Right.
The receiver has 200 some odd complaints. You pulled up the receiver's website. I think it has about 240 complaints against them. And they're creating investor losses, even though companies are going public. Just for example, right? SpaceX filed to go public last week or a week and a half ago. And we bought it at a $200 million valuation. I believe in the private markets, it was trading at an $800 million valuation. So that's a 4X for the customers if it went public today, let's say.
Right.
And the receiver actually found a way to generate a loss because they need to pay themselves and they're giving the customers pennies on the dollar and they're not really delivering what they're supposed to do because they need a way to generate fees for themselves. I think the receivers made north of 20 million.
Wow.
Since
in how long a time?
4 years. So a Ponzi
incredible
scheme that's still operating and it's still generating revenue, right? How many Ponzi schemes have you heard of that? 4 years after the fact, it's still working.
It's still working. Yeah. The only Ponzi scheme I know of is the federal government. If that's a fact. I mean, we could start with Social Security and move on down from there. Did you file any Rule 29 motions for acquittal or Rule 33 motions for a new trial by any chance?
We're going to file for an appeal right at sentencing, I believe. That's the way my counsel's looking to highlight. We're filing a couple of motions, I believe.
Okay. Since you're appealing, was there evidence that you believe the jury never saw?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They withheld probably from jury selection on down was a total sham. I mean, we were out of the 37 jurors, they had the jurors that got stricken from the record immediately there was a lady that she knew about pre-IPO. They didn't want her there, obviously. They had a financial advisor. They had a financial attorney. They had a CPA. Those are the people that obviously the prosecution did not want there. So
go ahead.
All the way across, it's been just hoodwinked and a sham. Is just basically they create a truth. They'll look at 500 words, cherry pick 3 of them, make that their own truth, and I just can't take it anymore. I'm just fed up. I'm frustrated. Because if they're doing it to me, how many other millions of people do we not know that they're doing it to?
Well, I'm glad you raised that point because as we're live right now, so yes, Santa Claus versus Scrooge fantasy over in X, we are live. And I see a lot of our friends from the MMTLP community are in the chat right now. They're sharing the show out. They're watching because they know I'm covering what happened to those people. 100,000 of them got absolutely left holding the bag when the government did a U3 halt on a stock ticker that was never supposed to be trading. It was a placeholder stock ticker for a dividend payment in a reverse merger. And these folks were told the stock would be stopped trading on a certain date, and the government halted the stock 2 days before. And so anybody that was trying to get out or do whatever was basically eliminated from being able to pursue their action plan. And the government has, cost people their lives, their fortunes, their families. Some people, veterans, I understand, have committed suicide over this. This lives destroyed. And the community, as I'm getting to know them, is nothing but miraculously standing up still 3 years later, strong. They have a real sense of, family and spirit amongst themselves, and they've helped themselves to continue to push this story because when you start to look at how many people were impacted and the amount of money we're talking about when the stock was oversold and oversubscribed by maybe even 13x, this could be bigger than Enron. It could be bigger than Madoff. I mean, it's a monster story, and it's getting the attention of people like Charles Payne and others. Other people have talked about the story in the past. So what your story reflects to me is, again, the continuation of agency fraud at the expense of we the people. Trennis, I know that you guys are, asking the public to review evidence, and you're doing a media campaign to get the court of public opinion. What's the legal basis for the pardon application? Simply put,
The legal basis for the pardon application is going to be quite clear, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Tickton and his choices, but let's be clear on several of the aspects here. One, we know that because of the Arctic Frost indictments, we had the suspicion all along. We were working this case long before Arctic Frost hit the table. When we were able to see the strong parallels and the leadership effort that took place within the DOJ, SEC, and interagency coordinations to target conservatives at the Arctic Frost level and anything attached to Trump. And then very obvious, as Mr. Castillero has attachments there in a loosely formed by being a member of Mar-a-Lago club, or excuse me, one of the Trump clubs. These matters, right? It's very clear that there was a target painted on the back of anyone. This was a seek and destroy mission. We didn't have to have evidence. So we didn't have to have a complaint. We don't even know why we're looking. We're going to open the books. We're going to assert a crime to destroy the business. When that doesn't work because people are making money and it's all going well, then we have to, and we're caught with our hand in the cookie jar is what happened to the SEC. Then they have to turn on their nose. So these legal principles in this would be, I believe that there's going to be concepts here to go along with wrongful prosecution. There's going to be matters of deprivation of constitutional rights. There's going to additionally be concepts that have to do with fraud, fraudulent concealment, ethics violations, et cetera, that took place at the SEC and DOJ level from SDNY. And here's all we're asking. We just asked the DOJ. We asked President Trump, not only do we need to pardon Mr. Castillero, not only do we need to pardon these people, the associates here that created this wonderful company that was a benefit and a boon to those that invested. We need a meaningful investigation into the actions of these receivers. We need a meaningful investigation into what this whole program is, because it was designed to help and protect the public. And right now it's taken a juxtaposition. It's doing anything but. It's the antithesis of helping and protecting the public. It is the destroyer of public value and trust. And it has now become weaponized to take on people like Mr. Castillero and Straight Path.
So is this really designed to be more like General Flynn's pardon of innocence? Because if he's done nothing wrong and he's not guilty, would this not be better framed as a pardon of innocence than just a pardon? Because a lot of times when you just say pardon, it's because they were considered guilty and the president showing mercy.
And if I may, so if President Trump and his team and the worthy people at the Department of Justice will take a close look at this. And I believe anyone that's an attorney, you don't have to be an attorney to look at this and understand the facts. It's very simple. We're talking in terminology here a lot, but it's very complex. Essentially, the bad guys went after the good guys because of their political affiliation. Period. The end. That's the starting point, right? Secondly, we have a concept here that if Mr. Castillero has sentencing coming around in just a few months, right?
March 6th, I believe.
If he were to receive the pardon, as well as the other participants here, the other founders of this wonderful company that was a meaningful opportunity for so many Americans, if they receive a pardon prior to that, then the criminal conviction becomes dismissed. It is not in stone. It's not etched in stone until the sentencing date is handed. You well know. So we're urging President Trump to get the pardon out first, but that's not, it should not stop there. There should be an investigation into these receivers, into these individuals, into the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office. I know there's good people there. I know that there's people there that don't take part in these kinds of things. And I know that leadership there probably has no concept that this even happens and has to believe that their team and staff are operating above board and doing good things. In this case, it's another case where we're certain of that. It's absolutely not what's happening.
Right. Michael, if my audience reviewed the full SEC and the full DOJ record alongside the claims that you've stated here, are you confident that those documents would tell the same story you've told here?
I believe so, because math never lies. Right? I mean, the numbers never lie. The math never lies. And that's the thing I've always said. I've always said from day one, the numbers will always set us free.
Right.
2 + 2 is 4. That's it. There's no other way to redo it. And And we've always said we had the shares, we delivered them. We, a lot of, they're claiming a lot of the money that we made. Yeah, we made them after the companies weren't public. Our fund was incentivized all the way across. We went out to some markup, but truly 20% of what the profit the customers made, we were allowed to take. It was
Right.
disclosed. It's standard fund practice, reviewed by multiple attorneys. It's unreal what they've done. And they've done it with the best interest of the 2,200 people that they're pulling the fast one on.
Incredible. Gentlemen, you have your work cut out for you. I mean, the government has an unlimited purse. They've got the power of the purse. It's unlimited. It just goes on. And for some reason, we keep giving them the ability to print that money. I'm just wondering how much longer we are until we get into that almighty alter and abolish moment that's right in the Declaration of Independence at the front of my Constitution, because from where I'm sitting, none of these agencies are legitimate. They're not listed anywhere in the Constitution. They've become unelected bureaucrat tyrants. They make up the rules. They're ignoring the Chevron doctrine that was overturned in the Loper-Bright case in the Supreme Court. They're ignoring the fact that they don't have the ability to make the laws and govern and rule on the laws themselves. They're just a guidepost, and now they're turned into the big bullies that come after the little guy and steal your lunch so that they can resell it on their end, receivership, and make lots and lots of money. It's just really a crazy situation that, we find ourselves in, that one of these days the hunters are going to become the hunted. And I think that tide is turning, but it's going to take a mass public awareness campaign and court of public opinion to turn that around. So, gentlemen, I appreciate the fact that you came here to tell your story. Is there anything you want to say in closing, Trennis?
I would like to say that Mr. Castillero and this whole thing with Mr. Martinson has been an atrocious miscarriage, misuse, and a misapplication of our laws. It has been a witch hunt, an attack, and a destructive force that operated in the lives of good Americans. And the fallout happens well below the individuals here that created a worthy and good company that operated in good standing, that nobody had a problem with until the Biden era weaponized administration came along with the ideology that was pushed forward by none other than Jack Smith. Right. These people must be stopped. They must be held accountable. And this is what we say when we're talking about the hunter becoming the hunted. We're not talking about, we aren't doing it ourselves. We're not raising up arms. We're not getting our torches and pitchforks. Nope. But metaphorically, torches and pitchforks time, people. We need to bring light to this issue. We need to make sure that people like Mr. Castillero are not only get a full recovery of the financial loss, but their relationships, their a standard in the community, their understanding of who they are. These things need to be backtracked, walk back, and if the United States District Attorney's Office and the Southern District of New York wanted justice and wanted to do the right thing, that is the right thing to do. Review the case, make a recommendation to President Trump, pardon these individuals, get a dismissal, and give them all of their rights back, one or the other. But there is the right path here.
Well, Stockvader just posted MMTLP can bring down the SEC and FINRA. Stay tuned. They're not wrong. From where I'm sitting and what I saw last night, Michael, your troubles may go away sooner than later. We're going to be breaking that story here very, very, very soon. And I'm working with an incredible team, the MMTLP Army. You should probably look into that community. You'll find a lot of like minds in there, Michael, and you'll find a lot of friends. They're wonderful, wonderful people. So encourage you. Trent, the same thing. These folks have done some deep dives, and they can probably be a real resource in what you're trying to do as well. So I would encourage you to reach out. I can make some connections if that'll be a help
and
to you.
Make some connections. I'm interested to hear these parallels because we might connect with the others that we have. And I think it's going to be very interesting when we start showing that there's not one, not two, not seven, not nine, but 10 and 12. Similar to the Himalayan exchange scenario with Miles Gow, et cetera, et cetera. We are seeing so many terrible parallels here. So I look forward to hearing what these folks have to say.
Great. Great. Michael, I'm going to give you last word here. What do you want to leave the folks today with?
It's been a rough 4 years, but I got to keep fighting. I have a wife and 2 kids, and I got to make sure that whatever lies and narrative has made about me, I got to fix it. And because I don't want them living with this cloud over them. And I just gotta continue to fight to clear my name, because these agencies need to be straightened out. They need to be punished for weaponizing the government just because they don't like what you believe in. That's not what America was founded on. That's not what this country was founded on. And
I was listening.
I'm sure our founding fathers are rolling in their graves seeing this. Because
You're not lying. I say it every day. As the daughter of the American Revolution, I say it every day. Go ahead, Trennis.
As my mother says, they're not rolling, they're spinning. She said they did. This is horrific what's happened in our country, how the powers and levers have seized control by evil men. And it's time for good men like Mr. Castillero, these people to be exonerated. It's time for good men like Mr. Tickton, Mr. Trump, and so many others to do what needs to be done to rectify this country. And it's going to take bold and decisive action. I don't think we're going to do this in our courts. I think they're going to have those tribunals. I do believe that that's what it has to come to hold accountable those that have so misused their authority.
Yeah. Roger just popped in from the MMTLP community, says never surrender. And I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. We've got somebody else from the community. What happened to our country? Boy, what happened to our country is exactly right. Well, we're awake now. We have a lot of public evidence being, brought to the forefront, thanks to X, thanks to Facebook, thanks to all these platforms that in the past were very wrought, with censorship. We still have some issues there, but you know what? We're fighting through the censorship and we're coming together. We're finding each other. Trennis, I'm definitely going to connect you with the folks over there. Michael, if you have of interest, I'm happy to connect. Just hashtag MMTLP. That on X, if you just do a search for that, you will find massive amounts of information. But I can assure you this story that I'm going to be breaking here based on the recent FOIA is going to set some people's hair on fire. And I'm looking forward to dropping that bomb. And we're going to have a bunch of little grenades that come out. And we're not going to stop. It's relentless. I think what we're going to end up with is a press conference in front of the SEC here in the not too distant future, demanding a lot of stuff. So stay tuned. And Michael, we will, we'll continue to follow your story. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Trennis, thank you. I know you've got to get back to the event out in Phoenix.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me in. You're always a warrior. It's glad to be here with you anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, guys, what you've just heard are claims, but they're very serious claims. And these are set against what I would consider to be a very equally serious accounting of, should we say, bad dealings coming out of the SEC and out of FINRA and other agencies around our supposed federal government. But in our country, allegations of government misconduct deserve a lot of scrutiny. And what you're going to learn is that the MMTLP community is bringing a lot of scrutiny. Michael Castillero's scrutiny is going to bring, should I say, his investigation is going to bring a lot of scrutiny. And as a journalist, I can't choose sides. I got to look at the evidence. But if documentation supports claims of misconduct and inducement or procedural abuse, believe you me, I'm going to be all over it because the facts matter. We just don't talk about claims. We look at the evidence. And the evidence I'm seeing from where I'm sitting is pretty damn over the top. And I think that these agencies have a lot to atone for. They've got a lot of... they've got a lot of heat coming their way. So, folks, stay tuned. We've got a lot more on this. And I appreciate you tuning in to the MMTLP community. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for reposting and sharing. You guys are incredible. It is an honor to help bring some light to your story as well. And to Michael Castillero, great man. I feel terrible for what they've done to him and his partners, and to particularly the stockholders, because, again, it's the American people that invest in what they consider to be good business, and to have that good business attacked by the very agency that's supposed to protect the people that are investing in that business. And everybody loses but the government, who then steals your business, puts it into receivership, and starts a cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. This is a playbook. It's a broken wash, rinse, repeat pattern that we see over and over again. And thank God for Peter Tickton and Trennis Evans at Condemned USA for stepping in to the fight. And to all the folks at MMTLP keeping the fight alive. You guys are incredible. Have a wonderful day. More to come, and we'll talk to you guys again. Have a good weekend, everybody. I know people are getting ready for Christmas. God bless.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you.